The letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered by a mailman who looked like he knew he was handing me a live grenade. He held the envelope with the tips of his fingers, extending his arm fully, as if trying to maximize the distance between the blast zone and his vital organs. "Certified mail, buddy," he said, offering a sympathetic grimace. "Sign here. Sorry." I signed. I knew what it was. In the suburbs, specifically in the manicured beige hellscape known as the Oak Creek Homeowners Association, certified mail only means one thing: you have sinned against the aesthetic gods. I stood in my driveway, the humid Florida air sticking my t-shirt to my back, and tore open the envelope. The paper was thick, bonded, expensive. It smelled faintly of lemon pledge and judgment. Notice of violation. Class B infraction. Date, June 14th. Recipient, Mr. Jack Miller. Regarding unauthorized lawn ornamentation, referred Section 8.4, visual nuisance. I lowered the paper and looked at the visual nuisance in question. They were arranged in a semicircle around my front flower bed, nestled among the petunias. My 7 garden gnomes. They weren't the cheap, plastic dollar store garbage that fades in a week. These were heirloom-quality, ceramic, hand-painted masterpieces I'd inherited from my grandmother. There was Fisherman Fred holding a tiny rod. There was Grilling Gary with a spatula. There was even Naptime Ned, who was just sleeping on a mushroom. They were wholesome. They were charming. According to the letter, they were disturbing. I read the handwritten note at the bottom, penned in aggressive, looping cursive that looked like it had been carved into the paper with a dagger. Mr. Miller, several complaints have been filed regarding the uncanny and threatening nature of these figures. Their eyes seem to follow pedestrians. They promote a pagan aesthetic inconsistent with the Oak Creek guidelines. Please remove them within 48 hours to avoid fines. The Architectural Control Committee. Several complaints, I muttered to my dog, Barnaby, who was currently peeing on the tire of my truck. Barnaby, we both know several is a statistical lie. There was only one person who used the phrase pagan aesthetic. I turned my head slowly to the right. My property line was marked by a white picket fence that was so clean it looked like a computer rendering. Beyond that fence lay the kingdom of Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins, let's call her Karen, because if the haircut fits, wear it, was currently in her driveway. She was ostensibly sweeping dust off her concrete, but her head was cocked toward me like a radar dish. She was wearing her signature floral visor and a look of permanent dissatisfaction. I walked to the fence. I didn't want a war. I just wanted my gnomes to fish in peace. "Mrs. Higgins?" I called out. She jumped, feigning surprise, clutching her broom to her chest. "Oh, Jack, I didn't see you there." "I got the letter," I said, waving the ivory paper. "Oh?" She smoothed her polo shirt. "The HOA is very efficient. I'm glad they reached out. It says my gnomes are threatening and that they have a pagan aesthetic." "Well," she sniffed, taking a step closer to the fence, her eyes darting toward Fisherman Fred. "You have to admit, Jack, there is something unholy about them. The way they stare, it's unsettling for the children." "What children?" I asked. "The youngest person on this block is 42. Grandchildren visit," she snapped. "And frankly, their little red hats are aggressive. It clashes with the neighborhood palette. We are an earth tone community, Jack. Red is a primary color. It screams. They're gnomes, Mrs. Higgins. They are literally folklore. They protect gardens. She narrowed her eyes. They look like they're plotting something. Yesterday, I swear the one with the shovel moved 3 inches to the left. That's because I was weeding, and I moved him. See? She pointed a manicured finger at me. They are mobile. It creates a chaotic visual environment. I'm simply looking out for property values. If you want to decorate, put up a bird bath, a beige one. Until then, the rules are the rules. She turned her back on me and resumed sweeping her spotless driveway. The conversation was over. I looked down at the letter. Fine for non-compliance, $100 per day. I looked at Fisherman Fred. He smiled back, his ceramic eyes full of innocent joy. She called you unholy, Fred, I whispered. This isn't over. I tried to hold out, I really did. It was a matter of principle. This is America. A man should be allowed to have small ceramic men in his mulch if he so chooses. Day 1 passed. I did nothing. Day 2 passed. I moved Naptime Ned to a more prominent position near the mailbox. On day 3, the second letter arrived. Notice of non-compliance. Fine assessed, $100, continuing violation. Yes. I walked outside to find Mrs. Higgins standing on a stepladder on her side of the fence. She was holding a DSLR camera with a lens long enough to photograph a pimple on the moon. She was snapping photos of my flower bed. Click, whir, click, whir. Morning, paparazzi, I shouted, sipping my coffee. She nearly fell off the ladder. She scrambled down, flushed but defiant. I am documenting the evidence. You are racking up fines, Jack. This is willful insubordination. It's gardening, Karen. It's whimsical. It is creepy, she shrieked, her voice cracking. I woke up last night and I could feel them looking at my house. I had to close the blinds. That sounds like a you problem, not a gnome problem. It is a wallet problem, she yelled back. Keep them up. See what happens to your bank account. I went inside and did the math. My mortgage was already high. Gas prices were up. I couldn't afford a $3,000 monthly gnome tax just to prove a point to a woman who probably ironed her socks. I had to fold. But I wasn't going to do it quietly. That Saturday, I staged the removal. I didn't just toss them in a box. I wanted guilt. I wanted the neighborhood to bear witness to the tragedy. I woke up at 7 o'clock a.m. I put on a black suit. I went into the garage and found a shoebox, which I spray-painted black. I draped a black towel over my wheelbarrow. I walked out to the flower bed. Mrs. Higgins was there, of course, peeking through her blinds. I could see the slats separating. I picked up Grilling Gary first. I held him to the sky, like Simba in The Lion King, before clutching him to my chest. I wiped a fake tear from my eye. I placed him gently into the hearse, the wheelbarrow. I moved to Fisherman Fred. I patted his head. I whispered a goodbye that was loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I'm sorry, Fred. The bad lady doesn't like your joy. You're too happy for this world. A neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was walking his golden retriever. He stopped on the sidewalk, looking confused. Everything okay, Jack? Henderson asked. Just a funeral, Bob, I said somberly. Mrs. Higgins reported them, said they were pagan. They have to go into exile. Henderson looked at the Gnomes, then at Mrs. Higgins' house. He shook his head. Serious? She reported the Gnomes? My grandkids loved those guys. I know, Bob, I know, but the visual nuisance must be purged. I loaded the last gnome. I slowly wheeled the barrow up the driveway, playing taps on my phone at full volume. As I closed the garage door, plunging the 7 dwarfs into darkness, I felt a burning sensation in my chest. It wasn't heartburn. It was the white-hot ember of spite. Mrs. Higgins had won the battle. She had used the rulebook to crush my spirit. But here's the thing about rulebooks. They are double-edged swords. If you live by the sword, you die by the sword. Or in this case, by the dinosaur. I went into my office, cracked a beer, and opened the Oak Creek HOA Covenants, Conditions and Restrictions, CCNRs. It was a 400-page PDF of pure misery. "Okay, Karen," I muttered, scrolling to page 1. "Let's see what you missed." Reading HOA bylaws is like reading the instruction manual for a nuclear reactor written by someone who failed high school English. It was dense, contradictory, and full of words like herein, aforementioned, and curtilage. I spent 6 hours staring at the screen. My eyes were bleeding. Section 8.4. The clause she used against me. No lawn ornaments, plastic figures, or ceramic displays under 24 inches that depict mythological, fantasy, or cartoonish characters are permitted in front-facing yards. There it was. Under 24 inches. Mythological. Gnomes are mythological. My gnomes were 18 inches tall. She had me dead to rights on the height and the species. I kept scrolling. Section 8.5. Fountains. No. Section 8.6. Flagpoles. No. Section 8.7. Holiday decorations. Only permitted 30 days prior to the holiday. I was losing hope. Maybe I just had to buy a 25-inch gnome? No, that would still be mythological. Then, I hit Section 9, Statuary and Fine Art Displays. I leaned in. The text was boring, but the implications were electric. To encourage a cultured and sophisticated atmosphere, residents are permitted to display tasteful statuary. Such statuary must be of natural stone, metal, or high-quality resin composite. Statuary must exceed 5 feet in height to ensure visibility as an art piece, but must not exceed 12 feet to adhere to skyline restrictions. Okay. Big art is allowed. But what kind? Permitted subjects include abstract forms, classical human figures, and representations of natural history, scientific interest. Any display deemed historical is exempt from the visual nuisance clause of Section 8.4. I froze. Representations of natural history. My brain started firing synapses like a grand finale fireworks show. Natural history. What is more natural history than the Cretaceous period? Dinosaurs aren't mythological. They aren't fantasy. They are science. They are history. They are in museums. I grabbed my phone and dialed my friend Dave. Dave is a contract lawyer who hates HOAs more than he hates paying taxes. "Dave," I said when he picked up, "hypothetically, is a Tyrannosaurus Rex considered natural history?" "Jack, it's Saturday night. Are you drunk?" "I am sober and vindictive. Listen to this clause." I read him Section 9. There was a silence on the line. Then I heard the distinctive sound of Dave shifting in his chair. "Read that last part again. Exempt from visual nuisance." "Exempt," I confirmed. "Jack," Dave said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "if you put a generic dragon on your lawn, they'll fine you. Mythology. But a T-Rex? That's an animal. That's biology. If they try to fine you, they are effectively arguing against the existence of the fossil record. You could argue they are discriminating against science." "And the size?" "It has to be over 5 feet, Dave said. "Go big or go home." "Oh, I'm going big, Dave. I'm going so big." I hung up. I looked out the window at Mrs. Higgins' house. Her lights were off. She was probably sleeping the sleep of the righteous, dreaming of beige walls and ruler-measured grass. She had taken my gnomes because they were creepy. She thought a smiling guy with a fishing pole was creepy. Wait until she wakes up to a 9-foot apex predator staring into her soul. You can't just walk into Home Depot and buy a life-size dinosaur. They have seasonal skeletons for Halloween, but those are plastic and flimsy. I needed statuary. I needed high-quality resin or metal. I needed something that could survive a hurricane and/or a lawsuit. I spent Sunday scouring the internet. Large dinosaur statue for sale. Jurassic Park prop liquidation. Metal art raptor. Most of it was junk. But then, on the third page of a Craigslist search for industrial art, I found it. For sale, metal T-Rex. 9 feet tall, custom welded. $4,000 OBO. No tire kickers. The photo was grainy, taken in what looked like a scrapyard in Ocala. It was terrifying. It was beautiful. It was made of rusted scrap metal, gears, and automotive parts welded together to form the skeleton and musculature of a T-Rex. Its mouth was open in a silent roar. Its teeth were made of old railroad spikes. It was perfect. I hooked up the trailer to my truck and drove 2 hours north. I pulled into a dusty lot filled with twisted metal sculptures, dragons, aliens, giant ants. A man walked out of a corrugated steel shed. He looked like he ate cigarettes for breakfast. He wiped grease-stained hands on a rag. "You the guy about the lizard?" he grunted. His name, according to the sign, was Rusty. Appunt. The T-Rex, I corrected. I need to see it. Rusty led me behind the shed. There it stood. The photo didn't do it justice. It towered over me. The rust gave it a reddish-brown hue, like dried blood. It looked heavy. It looked mean, made her out of transmission parts and structural steel, Rusty said, patting the dinosaur's leg. Weighs about 1,200 pounds. She ain't blowing over. It's magnificent, I whispered. What do you need it for? Rusty asked, lighting a cigarette. Theme park? Mini-golf? Spite, I said. Rusty paused. He squinted at me through the smoke. Spite? My neighbor reported my garden gnomes. She runs the HOA. I found a loophole that allows natural history statues over 5 feet tall. Rusty looked at the T-Rex. Then he looked at me. A slow, jagged smile spread across his face. So you're gonna put a predator on your lawn to scare an old lady? I'm going to put a scientific display on my lawn to educate the community, I corrected. Rusty laughed. It sounded like a car backfiring. I like you. I hate HOAs. They told me I couldn't park my boat in my own driveway. I'll knock $500 off the price if you promise to send me a picture of her face. Deal. We shook hands. Now, Rusty said, looking at my trailer, how the hell are we going to get this thing on there without killing us both? It took 3 hours, a forklift, and a lot of swearing, but we got the beast secured. Rusty threw in a heavy-duty tarp. Keep it covered, he advised. Element of surprise is key in warfare. I drove home slowly. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the massive, tarp-covered lump trailing behind me, I giggled. It was a manic giggle. The giggle of a man who has crossed a line and is accelerating. According to the bylaws, statuary must be securely anchored to a permanent foundation to prevent toppling. I couldn't just plop Rexy on the grass. I needed a slab. I called Mike. Mike runs a concrete pouring business. He's a guy who has seen everything in the construction world. Bad plumbing, hidden mold, angry ex-wives. I need a 10 by 10 pad in the front yard, I told him over the phone. Reinforced, heavy duty. Front yard? Mike asked. Like, for a basketball hoop? For art, I said. Mike came over on Tuesday. He spray-painted the lines on the grass. The location was strategic. It was technically on my side of the property line, but angled specifically so that the front of the pad faced directly toward Mrs. Higgins's kitchen window. Mrs. Higgins, right on cue, materialized at the fence. "Jack," she barked. "What is this? What are you painting?" "Foundation, Mrs. Higgins," I said cheerfully. "For what? You can't build a shed in the front yard. Section 4.2. "Not a shed," I said. "It's a base for my new art installation, perfectly legal under Section 9. She glared at Mike. "What is he building?" Mike, to his credit, just shrugged. "I just pour the mud, lady. He pays the check." "I will be watching," she hissed. "If this is a fountain, I will have you fined into oblivion." "No water involved," I promised. The next day, the cement mixer arrived. The noise was incredible. Chug, 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 whoosh! The driver backed up, beeping loudly. The neighbors came out to watch. Mrs. Higgins stood on her porch, phone in hand, likely timing the noise duration to see if it violated the quiet enjoyment clause. Mike and his crew smoothed the wet concrete. They installed 4 heavy-duty steel anchor bolts into the wet cement, spaced exactly to match the mounting brackets on Rexy's feet. "Those are some serious bolts, Jack," Mike noted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "What kind of art needs industrial anchoring? You landing a helicopter?" I pulled Mike aside. I showed him the picture of Rexy on my phone. Mike's eyes went wide. He looked at the picture. He looked at Mrs. Higgins, who was currently measuring the distance from the concrete pad to the sidewalk with a tape measure. Mike started laughing. He laughed so hard he dropped his trowel. "No way," he wheezed. "No freaking way." "It's for science," I said. "That lady is going to have a stroke," Mike said, wiping tears from his eyes. "Dude, I'm not charging you for the rebar. This is the best job I've ever done." The concrete cured for 3 days. 3 days of suspense. The neighbors were buzzing. Rumors were flying. Was it a statue of myself? Was it a modern art cube? Was it a giant middle finger? Metaphorically, yes. I checked the bolts. They were solid. "The nest is ready," I told Barnaby. "It's time to bring the bird home." Saturday morning. The sun was shining. The birds were singing. The stage was set. I had kept Rexy hidden in my garage, disassembled slightly, the tail detaches, to fit. But I couldn't lift him alone. I had hired a local rigger with a small crane truck to handle the final placement. At 9:00 a.m., the crane truck arrived. It was loud. It was yellow. It blocked the entire cul-de-sac. Mrs. Higgins came storming out in her bathrobe. "You cannot block the street!" she screamed. "Emergency vehicles must be able to pass." "It's a delivery, Mrs. Higgins," I shouted back. "They'll be gone in 20 minutes!" I opened the garage door. The rigger, a guy named Sal, hooked the straps around Rexy's torso. "Ready to fly?" Sal yelled. "Let's do it!" The winch whined. Slowly, majestically, the massive, rusted metal body of the Tyrannosaurus Rex lifted off the garage floor. It swung out into the sunlight. Because of the angle, Mrs. Higgins couldn't see what it was yet. She was blocked by the truck's cab. All she could see was a massive, dark shape swinging through the air, covered in the blue tarp. "Careful!" I yelled. "Watch the tail!" Sal maneuvered the beast over the freshly cured concrete pad. "Lowering!" The metal feet clanged against the concrete. We scrambled to line up the bolts. I grabbed the impact wrench. Zizty chunk. Zizty chunk. Rexy was bolted down. He was immovable. He was facing northeast, directly at the bay window where Mrs. Higgins drank her morning tea. "All clear," Sal yelled, unhooking the straps. The truck retracted its boom. The engine idled down. The tarp was still on. It looked like a ghost. A very large, misshapen, terrifying ghost. The neighborhood had gathered. Bob Henderson was there with his coffee. The young couple from down the street, the Patels, were watching from their driveway. Mrs. Higgins marched down her driveway to the edge of my lawn. "Okay, Jack," she demanded, hands on hips. "Take it off. Let's see this monstrosity so I can write up the citation immediately." I stood by the leg of the statue. I grabbed the corner of the tarp. "Mrs. Higgins," I said, my voice projecting like an orator in the Roman Senate. "You said my gnomes were unnatural. You said they were mythological. You demanded I adhere to the standards of natural history and science." "Just show me the statue," she yelled. "As you wish." I yanked the tarp. The blue tarp fluttered down like a curtain dropping on the opening night of a horror movie. Sunlight hit the rusted metal. The teeth gleamed. The empty, hollow sockets of the eyes seemed to lock instantly onto Mrs. Higgins. The silence in the cul-de-sac was absolute for exactly 3 seconds. Then the screaming started. Mrs. Higgins didn't just scream. She shrieked. It was a primal sound, like a banshee realizing it had lost a winning lottery ticket. She stumbled back, clutching her chest. "What is that?" she screeched. "What in God's name is that?" "It's a Tyrannosaurus rex," I said calmly. "Late Cretaceous period. Note the 2-fingered forelimbs. Very scientifically accurate." It's looking at my house," she yelled, pointing a trembling finger. "It's attacking my house." "It's a statue, Karen. It's not attacking anything. It's grazing. Well, hunting. But passively." Bob Henderson started laughing. It started as a chuckle, then blossomed into a full belly laugh. "Holy cow, Jack. That's a dinosaur." "It's hideous," Mrs. Higgins yelled, turning to the neighbors for support. "Look at it. It's rusty. It's violent. It looks like Satan's pet." "Actually," I said, pulling a laminated card out of my pocket, "it's industrial chic, very trendy in urban art circles. And notice the height? 9 feet exactly. Well within the 12-foot limit of Section 9. "I am calling the police," she screamed. "I am calling the police, the fire department, and the city council." She turned and ran back into her house, slamming the door so hard I felt the vibration through the soles of my shoes. I looked up at Rexy. He looked fantastic. To add a little flavor, I reached into a bag I'd brought out. I pulled out a giant, pink, oversized pair of sunglasses, stolen from a carnival prize stash, and hooked them onto Rexy's face. "There," I said. "Now he's approachable." The Patels walked over. "Jack," Mr. Patel said, grinning, "this is insane." "Thank you. My son is going to lose his mind when he sees this from the school bus." "That's the goal," I said. "Educational outreach." "Is she really calling the cops?" Mrs. Patel asked, looking at the neighbor's house. "Oh, absolutely," I said, cracking a beer even though it was 10:00 a.m. "Showtime is just beginning." 20 minutes later, the cruisers arrived. Not one, but 2. Mrs. Higgins must have told dispatch there was an active hostage situation involving Godzilla. The officer stepped out. Officer Miller, no relation, and Officer Diaz. They had their hands resting near their belts, scanning for threats. They saw me. I was sitting on the concrete pad, patting the dinosaur's leg. They saw Rexy. They stopped. Officer Diaz actually took off his sunglasses to ensure he was seeing correctly. Mrs. Higgins came running out of her house, waving a copy of the HOA bylaws like a weapon. "Arrest him!" she shouted. "Officer, look at it. It's menacing. It's a threat to public safety. It's psychological warfare." Officer Miller walked up to the edge of the lawn. He looked at the T-Rex. He looked at the pink sunglasses. He looked at me. "Sir," Miller said, his voice straining to remain professional. "Is this your dinosaur?" "It is, officer," I said politely. "His name is Rexy." "The neighbor claims it's threatening her," Miller said. "It's a statue, officer. It's bolted to the ground. Unless it gains sentience and breaks the laws of physics, the only thing it's threatening is the concept of boredom." Mrs. Higgins pushed between them. "It's an eyesore! It's scary! Children will be traumatized. He put it there to harass me." "Ma'am," Officer Diaz said, "is the dinosaur on his property?" "Yes, but is it making noise?" "No, but look at its teeth." "Is it displaying any obscene imagery? Nudity? Profanity?" Diaz asked, looking at the rusted groin area of the T-Rex. "Doesn't look like it has any parts, ma'am." "It is the implication of violence," Mrs. Higgins shouted. Officer Miller turned to me. "Sir, do you have a permit for this?" "I don't need a city permit for landscaping art under 10 feet, I said, reciting. The local ordinance I had memorized. "And as for the HOA, I am fully compliant with Section 9 regarding natural history displays." I handed Miller the binder. Yes, I had made a binder. Miller flipped through it. He looked at the dinosaur again. He cracked. A smile broke through his stoic facade. "Natural history," Miller chuckled. "Okay, that's a new one." "It's educational," I added. Miller turned to Mrs. Higgins. "Ma'am, this is a civil matter. It's on his property. It's not a safety hazard. It's not blocking the sidewalk. We can't arrest a guy for having a dinosaur." "But it's ugly," she cried. "Being ugly isn't a crime, ma'am," Diaz said, deadpan. "If it were, we'd be arresting a lot of landscaping in this town." Mrs. Higgins turned purple. "I demand you write a report." "We'll write a report," Miller sighed. "Dispatch, show us clear at 124 Oak Street. Subject is a extinct reptile." Before they left, Officer Diaz leaned in. "Hey, can I get a picture with it? My kid loves Jurassic Park." "Be my guest," I said. Diaz stood next to Rexy, giving a thumbs up. Miller took the photo. Mrs. Higgins watched from her window, looking like she was chewing on a lemon. "Have a nice day, sir," Miller said. "Keep, whatever this is, contained." "Will do, officer." Round 1 to the T-Rex. The cease and desist letter from the HOA board arrived 48 hours later. Emergency hearing. Wednesday, 7:00 p.m. Subject: removal of unauthorized structure. This was the main event. I put on my best suit. I packed my binder. I grabbed a laser pointer. The community center basement was packed. Usually 3 people show up to these meetings. Tonight, it was standing room only. Everyone wanted to see the dino guy take on the gnome hater. Mrs. Higgins sat at the head table, flanked by the board president, a tired-looking man named Frank, and the treasurer, Janice. Mrs. Higgins started. She didn't just speak, she performed. She described the trauma of looking out her window. She described the T-Rex as a monstrosity of rusted hate. She claimed it lowered property values by 20% just by existing. "We cannot allow our neighborhood to turn into a junkyard," she concluded, slamming her hand on the table. "The bylaws clearly state no visual nuisances." Frank looked at me. "Mr. Miller, floor is yours." I stood up. I walked to the front. I set up my easel. "Ladies and gentlemen of the board," I began. "Neighbors, we are here today because I was told my garden gnomes, innocent, small, whimsical creatures, were a violation of our community standards." I paused. I was told to adhere to a higher standard, a standard of natural history and art. I have done exactly that. I opened my binder. I refer you to Article 9, subsection C. Statuary of natural history is exempt from nuisance claims. "It's a monster!" Mrs. Higgins shouted. "It is a Tyrannosaurus rex," I corrected. "The king of the tyrant lizards. It is the most famous animal in history. To call it a nuisance is to insult the field of paleontology." I pulled out a petition. "Furthermore, Mrs. Higgins claims the community hates it. I have here a petition signed by 43 residents, mostly children, admittedly, but also their parents, who love Rexy. The school bus driver actually slows down so the kids can wave at it." I slammed the petition on the table. "Mrs. Higgins used the rulebook as a weapon," I said, my voice dropping to a serious register. "She measured my grass with a ruler. She banned the color red. She banished the gnomes. But the rulebook is specific. It allows art. This is art. It is metalwork. It is history. And it is staying." The room was silent. Frank, the president, picked up the bylaws. He read the section. He read it again. He looked at Mrs. Higgins, who was vibrating with rage. Frank hated Mrs. Higgins. Everyone knew it. She had once reported Frank for leaving his garage door open for 20 minutes. A slow smile crept across Frank's face. "Technically," Frank said, leaning into the microphone, "Mr. Miller is correct." "What?" Mrs. Higgins gasped. "The bylaw is clear," Frank said. "Natural history displays are permitted. There is no clause restricting the type of animal. It meets the height requirement. It is anchored professionally. We cannot order its removal without opening ourselves up to a lawsuit regarding the definition of art." "This is insane!" Mrs. Higgins stood up. "I move to amend the bylaws immediately." "You can do that," Frank said. "But amendments take 6 months and a majority vote of all homeowners. Until then, the dinosaur stays." The room erupted. People clapped. Bob Henderson whistled. Mrs. Higgins gathered her papers, her face a mask of absolute defeat. She marched out of the room, muttering about lawyers and lawsuits. I walked up to Frank. "Good ruling, Frank." "Jack," Frank whispered, "that thing is hideous. But seeing her face? Worth it. Just maybe put a tie on it for Christmas?" "Way ahead of you, Frank." It has been 6 months since Rexy moved in. He is now a local celebrity. The mailman takes selfies with him. Uber Eats drivers use him as a landmark. Turn left at the dinosaur, you can't miss it. Mrs. Higgins has retreated. She installed heavy blackout curtains on her kitchen window. She built a 6-foot privacy fence, but here's the kicker. She built it 6 inches too high. I reported her. She had to cut it down. Rexy has become a fashion icon. October. I draped a giant white sheet over him. Ghost Rex. December, a massive Santa hat and a string of lights held in his jaws. Easter. Giant bunny ears. 4th of July. He held an American flag. I sit on my porch now, sipping my coffee. The gnomes are still in the garage, in their box. Sometimes I feel bad for them. They were the casualties of war. But then I look at Rexy. I look at the rust catching the morning sun. I look at the way he looms over the fence, eternally roaring at a woman who hates fun. It's peaceful. The other day I was cleaning up the yard, and I had a thought. Rexy looks a little lonely. The bylaws say statuary, singular or plural. I pulled out my phone and called Rusty. Rusty, it's Jack. Yeah, he's great. Listen, do you have any velociraptors? I feel like Rexy needs a pack. 3? Perfect. I'll bring the trailer. The gnomes were just the beginning. The Cretaceous period has only just begun.